Hello, this is GGN3, and today I'll be doing an animated profile on Donald Duck's use as a mascot for voluntary income taxes that were used for war spending during World War II. During World War II, the American government had persuaded cartoonists throughout the country to create propaganda cartoons used to support the efforts of the military during the war. Such cartoons consisted of mocking the Axis powers or contributing money to help support the war or any kind of work. In the case of Donald Duck, he was used in a couple cartoons during World War II by Walt Disney to persuade Americans to contribute their income tax money towards funding for the war. During World War II, the American government needed more money to help fund the war, so as a result, the Federal Reserve created an additional income tax that was voluntary for American citizens to pay. Because Americans had the option to pay or not to pay the two voluntary income taxes, Secretary of the Treasury at the time, Henry Morgenthau, needed an idea to try persuading Americans to pay their quarterly income taxes in a way that would convince them that it would be patriotic to pay them. In December of 1942, Morgenthau contacted Walt Disney and persuaded him to create an animated short that would encourage Americans to pay their quarterly income taxes. Walt was at first reluctant to go along with the idea because he assumed that the federal government wanted to use him to promote war bonds. Walt gave in to the idea and returned to California with a 6-week deadline to make the short and get into theaters by February of 1943. As a result, other projects that were being made by his studio were postponed, and a full-time crew labored around the clock on the new film. The short, known as The New Spirit, featured Donald Duck reluctant to pay income taxes, until hearing a radio broadcast that explained that the taxes could help America win the war. As a result, Donald quickly filled out his income tax return, and rushed to Washington to deliver his tax return in person. The New Spirit was previewed to Henry Morgenthau, and despite his reluctance of having Donald Duck be the representative of American citizens paying their income taxes, he gave his approval of the short. When The New Spirit premiered in theaters, it was an instant success with its audience, as Donald's slogan of "taxes to beat the Axis" became an inspiration for Americans to voluntarily pay their quarterly income taxes for the war. The short itself was even nominated for an Academy Award for documentary short subjects later that year. Later in 1943, the Treasury Department once again asked Walt to make a short cartoon to encourage Americans to pay their income taxes. The purpose of the piece this time around was to encourage Americans to save for their quarterly estimated tax payments to fund the war effort and to not be foolish with their spending. As a result, Walt created another Donald Duck cartoon focused around income taxes called The Spirit of 43. The short featured Donald Duck as a working American who was torn in a classic angel-devil conflict of consciousness concerning the use of his hard-earned money. The angel featured an early design of Scrooge McDuck, who was trying to encourage Donald to put his money in the bank so it was saved for quarterly income taxes in supporting the war. The devil was a wild-spending, zoot-suited hipster duck who was trying to persuade Donald to spend his money at a local tavern. That duck would later turn into a blatant representation of the Axis powers as his face turned into a caricature of Hitler complete with mustache, and the shutters to the tavern in which he tried pushing Donald into turned into a swastika. This was pushing the main message of the short that money not spent towards the war would be pushing things in favor of the Axis powers. In the end, Donald knocked out the hipster duck, showing his support of the war. The short then went on to feature what was being used with that money, which featured the development of weapons and different armaments that would be used to crush the Axis. The Spirit of 43 became just as popular as The New Spirit in encouraging Americans to save up money for their income taxes. In later years, The Spirit of 43 and The New Spirit were rarely shown on television due to their use as World War II propaganda. However, to the delight of animation enthusiasts, Walt Disney Pictures released a 2-disc set of many of their animated shorts used as World War II propaganda called On the Front Lines. in 2004, which was a part of the Walt Disney's Treasures DVD collection. Included in the number of shorts that were released in this collection were The Spirit of 43 and The New Spirit. This is all I have to cover on this animated profile of Donald Duck being a mascot for income taxes during World War II. If you have any suggestions for what I should do for a future animated profile, feel free to leave a comment at the bottom of the page of this video. Otherwise, this is GGN3 signing off on an animated profile covering Donald Duck being a mascot for income taxes during World War II.